In your expressions, have you been subject to any surveillance or harassment by the state or government?
Of course. After 9/11, every time I flew, I was taken aside twice by Homeland Security. Once when I went through the general security, and the second time when I was standing in line with my boarding pass. I spoke in, a full confession. I was invited by the communist government of Tuscany to speak to 10,000 high school students in an auditorium on American policy in the Middle East. And when I flew back, I was, although of course had a valid passport, I was taken into a room by Homeland Security and held there for about an hour until a supervisor came over and said to the officer behind the computer screen, "You can let him go, he's on a watch." This was happening to several of us who were very outspoken about the war, and I spoke to my friend Michael Ratner at the Center for Constitutional Rights, and we spoke about suing the government, and it instantly stopped. But you can be sure that that list is still existent. My phone, I have, because I spent 7 years in the Middle East, I have a lot of phone messages to and from the Middle East, and what happens is that when a call comes in, for instance, from Tehran, it rings once and it goes dead, and then whoever is calling from Tehran has to call back because that triggers the recording machine. I don't pose, and there is no threat to the state, but I can assure you that perhaps, well, I think more than perhaps, I think the reason that the draconian controls were so severe in places like Pittsburgh and Toronto was that they were seeking to deliver a message. They militarized the whole center of Pittsburgh. They turned it into the green zone, literally. They brought back a Pennsylvania National Guard battalion from Iraq in full combat gear and set up checkpoints and roadblocks and infiltrated groups and crashed websites and emails, and these poor groups of young anarchists brought a food bus, a school bus that was converted to make food, and that lasted about an hour, although it was parked in a private driveway before they took it away. I mean, most of the people protesting at Pittsburgh were retired Quakers in sandals. But the message was, don't try this. Don't try this. And I can assure you that the corporate state, which has built a frightening internal security apparatus, will use it. They used to say that the Gestapo broke bones, but the Stasi broke souls. And we become the Stasi, as anybody who's looked at what we do in our supermax prisons will tell you.
Thank you, Mr. Hedges. In 1997, Jerry Mander wrote a book called 4 Arguments for the Elimination of Television. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. You've touched on certain parts of it, and it has a lot to do in the areas where you speak about people becoming part of this corporate, enmeshed corporate institution and become so tied, both commercially in our consumerism, in our culture, and a big plasma TV like this would not fit in my living room. And how a culture that is so taken over, whose minds and souls and thoughts are totally taken over by manufactured messages beyond anybody's scope of reference, beyond anybody's knowledge, then I'd like to, well, I am trying to. Where do you see this trend going when television is brainwashing America?
I don't own a television, and I don't watch it, because I don't want to speak in the language in which they give me. And one of the things that frightens me is the severance of the death of a print-based culture and the rise of an image-based culture. Totalitarian societies are always spectacle and image-based. They do it really well. And you can go back and read Cicero on the arena and how the Roman Colosseum and the arena and the games poisoned civil and political discourse in ancient Rome. And that's precisely it's a very powerful form of pacification. As well as a way, one of the things that I find most disturbing is the way poor people are betrayed. I mean, the actual poverty of Americans has become invisible to the wider culture. But when we see poor people on Jerry Springer or reality shows, they're figures of ridicule, figures to be humiliated because they're too overweight or they're too stupid or they're too immoral. That's what the reality shows themselves celebrate or promote the values